questions are around old age and new age leadership styles. So how does old age styles differ from new age styles in terms of decision-making processes? What are your thoughts?
I'd say that the difference is new age is collaborative by default and directive by obligation or time constraint. Um, so you can have, directive leadership in a new age style, but it's only when you don't have the ability to be collaborative, right? When you have to make a decision, you will make those decisions, but the default is to collaborate.
Okay. So if I'm understanding, collaboration would mean I want to hear all of your ideas, but the final decision and take all of those under advisement.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, the final decision would come from the leader.
Uh, how we're going to implement this should be a collective decision. Um, make sure that everybody is comfortable with what we're going to be doing. Yes, there can be some, somebody has to put the stamp on it and say this is what we're going to be doing, right? But people should be comfortable with the direction. Whereas I think in more of a old age mentality, it would be more of a top down. This is what we're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be doing it this way because I've seen it done this way before, and I know that it works. So it's more of a fear of trying something new and just a comfortableness or familiarity with doing things a certain way.
John, before I ask you a question, I have one more for you, Caleb. What are your thoughts when me as the leader also in my decision-making process have to, how would I put it? I would have to also in that decision-making consider what my leader, my
Yeah,
boss.
yeah. You have constraints. You have your constraints from the organization. It's important to be transparent on what those constraints are, right? So in the collaborative session, you can either initially lay down what those constraints are, or as they come up, say, well, this won't work because of this, right? So here are the guardrails that we're working in between. How do we get this done within these guardrails?
Okay. John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this touches on the systems within which we work, which is kind of part of your
Yeah.
question about the boss's boss and the folks up the line and how much degrees of freedom do we have to act. And, you know, Marilyn, you and I both coach people that work in systems, and we can coach them into a buzzsaw and they can end up having to change jobs, or we coach them in ways of making decisions that feel right to them within these systems. And again, these systems are a bit in flux. If you think of the GM organization charts from the 70s, I mean, that used to be the example of a well-run company of how you do command and control and you scale a business efficiently and all of that. And I think that kind of view has become sclerotic a long time ago. It can't flex, it can't move fast enough, it can't change enough. And so it is shifting. And in my work with companies and large scale transformation, there's always an element of getting people aligned and persuading them and getting them to go along with the program. We had a client that it was kind of command and control oriented, and they had 26 vice presidents that all signed off on a multi-billion dollar investment in SAP, and it was getting towards the implementation for one of their large plants. And we were trying to find out what some of the issues were. And what they told us was, oh yeah, they signed it, but they didn't believe it. They didn't believe in the business case. They didn't, but they signed it because that's what you do in the kind of decision-making environment. Uh, so it makes it a little bit harder, kind of this shift to understand the system and how it works and to operate effectively within it. Um, but definitely there is a shift as we're trying to help people to be more, to act more like owners, to be more empowered, to make decisions like owners would make
Mhm,
within certain constraints.
mhm, mhm. Okay. When think about old age principles, I kind of wanted to see if you had any examples that you could support your view when it comes to what are some old age principles that you think would still be effective in today's fast-paced digital world?
Well, I'll jump in here because I mean, one of the things that, there's an expression, the courage to lead. And I think part of the courage is facing a great deal of uncertainty, is dealing with risk and fear and change and all of that. And so, how much of that the leader needs to pass on to the rest of the organization is a judgment call. And because not everybody wants to deal with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of risk. Um, but the organizations, have flattened out. And so I think some of the old age principles of what we want from a leader is to provide, a bit of stability, a bit of predictability so that we can operate our best. We don't go into a fear response, which closes everything down. Um, and I think that's still relevant. We talked about Kelly Greer and what she did during COVID, and I was coaching other women at the time and other men too, but everybody has a bit of the imposter syndrome and they say, well, look how Kelly does it. She knows how to do everything. And I said, do you think she's ever had to do a COVID response before? And talk about imposter syndrome. Um, you realize she's making this up as she goes. She's doing the best she can. It was such a great example of
Mhm.
how, we're all struggling. We're all trying to do the best we can. Um, so I think there's some principles that that still exist that are part of the foundation of what organizations need. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'll definitely agree with you there. That's a great example. Just reactions during COVID. Um, there's a there's a sense of like you have to be a stoic leader. I think that's that ties into a lot of the old school leadership style, right? You can't let anything phase you. And in everything that I've said up until this point, you have to be collaborative, you have to be empathetic, you have to uh, really see your team for the individuals that they are, but you still have to be the rock, right? You have to be the foundation that the team can rely on. They have to know that they can come to you you know, for that stability. That you have to be able to be receptive and you know, be receptive to questions, embrace folks for their questions, and guide them through their questions, right? So that stability. And it's a lot of fake it till you make it, right? You may not know if it's the right thing to do down the line, but instilling the confidence in your team that this is what I feel to be the right thing to do in this moment is important.
When we think about remote work and global teams,
Mhm.
how does new age leadership style address those challenges differently than a traditional leadership approach?
Well, this is playing out right now. I mean, real
Exactly.
time.
I think that I've got
Tell me
some
more.
I've
Tell me
got some
more.
got some things with this.
Okay.
Um, in in the new age way of working, we don't have a divide between our personal lives and our working lives. I mean, we try to instill some type of divide, but it's increasingly hard to do so. Um, so you will see me, you know, with my dog. You'll see me at home, you know, trying to make sure that everything is going right. In an office setting, if you're in a meeting, um, if the light flickers, you know, you can call the building staff to take care of it, right? But when you're working from home, you know, if the light flickers, it's like, oh, that's a bulb that I need to replace, and I can't devoid from being at work versus, you know, this being my home. So it's very hard to make that divide, near impossible for a lot of folks. And I think that a lot of people were really feeling this when COVID first started, right? Just trying to find that safe space where you could work, trying to figure out, you know, what it is that you can and can't do. Um, how are you going to deal with childcare? How are you going to deal with elder care? All of those things. It became just more prevalent and evident in society. I think that this is where I will say there is a benefit to being in the office, kind of like more of a legacy system. Now that we have the ability to do so, because you can much easier. It's a lot easier to have that divide, right? Between this is working time, my 9 to 5, you know, 7 to 5, whatever your working hours are, and this is personal time. As I stated before, like it's a lot. It's almost too easy for people to get in touch with you when you're outside of the office, because we don't have that divide anymore. And you need that space to, you know, to be a human, right? Where you're not a worker, you're just, you know, a guy taking care of his dog when he has to.
I think this line between the new age leadership styles and the old one is being drawn very clearly right now. On the one side, you've got leaders, a lot of them in financial services. Wall Street, you read about, Jamie Dimon was very early on this. 5 days a week in the office. You got to come back.
Mhm.
And there's other companies, other industries that are doing that too, of course.
Mhm.
And because we don't know, we don't think you're working very hard. We don't know what you're doing. We can't measure your work output properly. Good things happen when you're in the office, and we need that stuff to happen too. So that's one side. On the new age side, what I'm seeing is there's a recognition that, you know, serendipitous hallway conversations have always been an important part of culture, of development, of all sorts of great things happening. So having a nice office, you know, with a cafe and with lots of different pods and seating areas and everything it's necessary, but it's insufficient. So there needs to be a reason for people to come together, and there has to be some intention around that. So some companies are doing, you know, 3 days a week. We need you to be in the office. And some companies are doing the 5 days. And I think they're trying to figure this out because they know there's a benefit of collaboration. They know there's a benefit of in person. And so how to be more intentional about making that happen is a new age. I think the new age people are wrestling with that more. The old age are saying, just get back in the office.
Yeah, get back in the office for just the sake of, you know, of being seen, right? But what are you actually doing while you are there, right? So it to a point that we made earlier, is it meaningful work, right? Is there a reason for me to go into the office? Or am I just doing it because, you know, because you want to see my face and you think that I'm going to be more effective here? In my perspective, I know that I'll be more effective if I'm in the office, because I don't have to deal with the dog or anything like that while I'm in the office. But a lot of folks, you know, they have no issues working from home. I see it as there being too many distractions, but other folks may, you know, they may enjoy it.
Mhm. Well, I personally, I, I learned this long before pandemic that you can be effective from working from home because my work is either I work from home or I go to the airport and get on a plane, and then I'm 5 minutes from my client site. So I had the benefit of both. I could be at home and I could concentrate and I could, put my own schedule, work at my own pace as long as I hit the deadline. And then I still had the collaboration of being in an office when I would go on client site. So I kind of laughed when pandemic came and everybody was scrambling, like, what do we do? And how is this going to work? And I was like, I've been doing this for years.
Right.
So, I can see both sides of it, both opinions of it, but that's just how my little world works. It works for me. But for the masses, you're right. Companies and organizations are still trying to figure it out and struggle with it.
Yeah.
I should have said at the outset that I was at a client site Monday through Thursday
Uh-huh.
for years and
Likewise.
years and years, and all of a sudden one day I wasn't. And why did we do that? Because that's the way we do consulting, and we have to be there, and our clients want us there,
Yeah.
and we can't work any other way. And so all of a sudden we did, and all of a sudden
It worked.
it worked. All
It
of a sudden
works.
it worked. And then all of a sudden our clients were not so sure they wanted to provide real estate for us to work in their
Right.
area. They
Right.
weren't sure they wanted to pay the out-of-pocket expenses to have us travel every week.
Right.
And so that model, changed like that. And now sometimes it's a week a month, sometimes it's more on site, sometimes it's episodic, but it shifted immediately, and that's helping us, I think, move towards more of this new age leadership style.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of the things I loved about doing the consulting was the travel. I loved it. I mean, that for me, I don't know. I'm a road warrior and I like to travel. So you're right. We would be there, come in on Mondays and leave on Thursday and work from home on Fridays. And it worked. So
It's a perk. It's a perk of the job for sure. But
yeah. Yeah.
you know, to that point, you also COVID really taught me that sometimes it is nice to just not move,
Mhm.
right? To not be in an airport, 2 times a week, to actually, sleep in my own bed from time to time.
Right.
Uh, it's it it's something to it. Do I want to do it every day? No, but it is nice to have the option to do it.
Yeah. Options. Give us
Yes.
options. Yeah. When it comes to handling crisis and uncertainty, what lessons can new age leaders learn from old age leaders and vice versa?
I think we touched on this a bit in terms
Mm-hmm.
of, providing a certain amount of predictability
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, wanting to feel a level of safety and stability. And leaders can provide that, especially in times of crisis and uncertainty. Um, so we can call that, old age leadership style, I suppose. And maybe part of the difference, and I'm not sure it's related to leadership as much as it is related to the economic environment, changing social contract. But, you know, in one sense, we're all contract workers. And, most of us are employment at will, which means that we can be let go at any time. And many of us have been. And so this notion that understanding that you can get certain things from your leadership and other things you need to provide for yourself. I think this is more of a new age kind of a concept that's playing out because we want our leaders to be transparent. Part of that transparency is understanding the economic environment, understanding the risk that our business is under, that our roles might be under, that our jobs might be under. And so, we want to operate with full information, and we also want to have enough stability to be able to operate effectively. And I think we're trying to figure that out.
I definitely agree with that. I think that for yeah, the lessons that the old age can teach the new age is definitely some of the stoic behaviors that we discuss. Um, simply put, something uh, that the new age can teach the old age is authentic empathy. Um, like don't be empathetic because you know because you were told to build better team connections, right? Be empathetic or be try to build a connection with your team, an authentic connection. Understand who they are, understand what their needs are, and how their needs can be met that benefits the team, the organization, and themselves. Right. So what's the middle ground for like what their needs are, and how can we get them to, how can everybody be satisfied in the end of like at the end of the day, right? How can everybody get what they're looking for from this entire situation that we call work?
Mhm.
So I think I think that to some of the points that I mentioned before, uh, the collaborative nature of teams. I think that that is something that the old age can definitely look at more to the new age to figure out how they can be more collaborative, leveraging the skill set of their teammates or of the individual contributors. And to John's point, you know, how can all of the needs of the organization and individuals be met, right? So how can you be transparent? Um, Transparently identifying the needs of the organization and marrying those with the needs of the individual.
Mhm.
And this is, Kayla, this is super important. This point that you just made, which I think is an undercurrent to everything that we've talked about, which is the individual. As part of this whole shift we're talking about, it's a bit like the shift from mass marketing to mass customization. We're now old age to new age.
Mhm.
We're taught now what do the individual employee, what are their needs, and how do we help them? What kind of learner are they, and how do they best grow and develop? And so there's this desire for increased flexibility in how we handle an individual. When we start a team, one of the processes is to go through and find out how each individual, uh, in terms of ways of working, what works best for them. Some
Mm-hmm.
are, early morning, some like to work out, some like to do this, do that. And how can we as a team work together to meet everyone's needs? And I think that is an important underpinning to this whole shift towards new age leadership, which
Mhm.
is the ability to see people as individuals and not just as homogenous employees that we need to, sprinkle certain things on occasionally.
Right. That day zero conversation before you start a project or start working with a new team, understanding not only working styles and things like that, but goals. Right. What are your goals for this project? What are you looking to get out of it? Uh, what are some areas of improvement that you have? What are you looking to work on? And I think that I mentioned it before. How can I, as a leader, help you get to that point? And how can I help you shine in it, feel confident in the work that you're doing, and build up those areas of opportunities to make them real strengths.
Mhm. You know what? I'm totally in agreement with everything that both of you just said, but I have to play a little devil's advocate
Please do.
Go for
around
it.
this to say it's would be wonderful. That would be a wonderful world.
How do we do it?
But how do we do it? Exactly. Because we have leaders with come from all different backgrounds, all different beliefs, all different, um, stratums. And so how do we put this in place to make this blanket of part of our culture in organizations? So I love it, but I still have to push back and say, you know, it's a little pie in the sky where we'd like to go, and how do we get there? And I'm not saying we got to solve it today, but I think it's a question it's an ongoing team building question. It's something that it can't be solved in one team building or team coaching or anything like that. It's going to be a constant way of coaching teams, because teams constantly need work.
This will come out. I'll just say this quickly. This will come out in measurement and research, and it will be proven. So
Okay.
the idea that there's less attrition, there's better emotional and physical well-being, those can be measured. There's increased productivity, higher customer satisfaction, less likelihood of ethical lapses. So I think we have some indications of these benefits. And I think once these benefits get, better measured, more consistently researched, then it'll be imbued more into the organization, more than ideas, more than sort of like we want to have a culture that does this. It'll become the way that we need to operate.
Right. Yep. Measurement. You can't despite the data. I'll say that.
Marilyn, I love the pushback to, take it from conceptual to practical.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that there are ways to bridge that gap. I think that a lot of times leaders are put into leadership roles not because they know how to manage or lead, but because they know how to do a specific thing very well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in consulting, a lot of times people are put into leadership roles because they can sell very well, or they are a master at a specific. They have years of experience in a specific process or specific software, and they're put into that leadership role. We need to teach leaders how to lead rather than put them in these positions and have it be a free for all on their leadership styles, right? Because leadership is it's very ambiguous, but there are very defined, foundational points that we need to be honing in on, and that's both new age and legacy leadership styles, right? So I would say that a lot of those things are revolved around when to be directive versus when to be collaborative, right? When to be how do you build the empathy within your team, right? How are you giving your team the autonomy to do the work? When do you step in? It's a lot of those things, and I don't think that we're, I think that we're just saying, okay, you're in this leadership role because you do things well. Figure out how to lead these teams, right? And that's not necessarily effective.
Which is why Marilyn and I are in business as coaches, because
I love the work that you all are doing.
Because people get promoted, based on their strengths and what they're able to do. And it turns out that at the next level, whatever that happens to be, their strength, their traditional strength can get in the way. They can be holding on to it a little too tightly.
Yep.
And get in the way of working through other people and through organizations, and they need to let go a little bit. So yes, it's all part of the leadership development, which has also been shifting. Gosh, they think about the training.
Yes.
I mean, now the training includes things like managing energy, not time. And for leaders, and giving empathy starts with being empathetic towards oneself, and putting your own oxygen mask on first. And there's all of this going on along with this shift towards what we're calling new age leadership.
Right. Okay. Good stuff. When we think about challenges, I want to talk about challenges and advantages of transitioning, let's say from an old age leadership style to a new age leadership style. within an already established organization? What do you think are some challenges and advantages in this shift from old to new?
Well, say my boss is a new age leader. That's terrific. We're humming along. But
Uh-huh.
his or her boss is an old age leader,
Mm-hmm.
legacy. I keep hearing myself say old age and thinking that doesn't sound right, but not a new age leader. And so which am I going to be following to manage my career and at this point? And so transitions are incredibly difficult. And again, maybe COVID was a great accelerator towards the new age, but I still have clients that don't like to see any yellow and red in their status reports.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So a green status report doesn't convey much information or allow feedback or allow for growth and adjustment and change. So this tension, this tension exists, and yeah, we'll see it play out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do you think? Challenges, advantages.
Challenges. I think that some of the challenges of the transition, one of the main ones is going to definitely be, the fear of the unknown for the legacy transitioning into the new age. Um, a lot of times it is more fluff in regards to a lot of the new age styles, because it is about less of the head, more of the heart, and the heart is a lot more difficult to measure. Um, so you have to be a little bit more deliberate in how you're measuring things, how you are interpreting the things that you're measuring, and you need to sometimes extrapolate certain outcomes and the value of it, um, because it's not going to be nearly as defined in the I guess in the what's the word that I'm looking for, the metrics are going to be less defined, therefore you're going to need to extrapolate certain outcomes from the overall message that you're saying. um, so that's going to be a difficult piece. I think that some of the advantages, um, I mean, we've mentioned several of them,
Mm-hmm.
but you're definitely going to see, well, won't say definitely, but you're more than likely going to see increases in retention, and satisfaction scores, and the amount of productivity that individuals are putting into the job because they actually like the people that they're working with and like the work that they're doing. Um, so yeah, I mean the advantages are definitely going to be there, but I guess the flip side of that is the advantages are going to be a lot softer. Um, they're not going to be the hard metrics that we're used to measuring.
Okay. Um, I want to jump ahead a
Sure.
decade or two. Okay. Thinking about the future of leadership 10, 15, 20 years down the road. When we think about the skills and attributes, what are going to be the most? I know we've talked about some of these, but we talked about now, but let's talk about a decade or so down. What's going to be the most important for leaders to have when it comes to skill and attributes? And how do they align? How are they going to be able to align with the moving the old into the new?
I think that let me back up a little bit. So the way that people are learning now,
Mhm.
we are learning. I've said this before. We're learning a lot of concepts, but we're not necessarily learning, you know, how to do things.
Application.
Um,
Yeah.
yes,
Application.
yeah. So when we joined the workforce, and when Gen Z or I don't even know in 20 years from now what the generation is going to be called. When they join the workforce,
Mhm.
they're going to be coming with so much knowledge because knowledge is so easy to come by these days, but they don't have any experience. So they're going to be coming in as experts in concepts, but no practical knowledge. So I think that uh, a leadership skill that we're going to need to hone in on in the future is explaining the why this is important, why you're going to need to do things a certain way, why these concepts may not work in this given scenario. Um, because we're going to know all of the concepts. We're going to be able to do all of the research and find answers so quickly. But why do we do this in this situation? What aren't we looking at? So I think that those skills are going to be extremely important going forward.
John, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm thinking like 30 years ago or something there, Thomas Handy, I think, wrote something about a clover leaf organization. I think he was ahead of his time. He talked about the three parts being kind of the core workers, and then there'd be a group of outsourced workers, and then there'd be contract workers. And he envisioned that only 30% or so would be core workers. And 40% or so might be outsourced, and another 30%, maybe I don't know the percentage is exactly right. And I feel like we are headed there. I feel like that model, um, I don't know, that model may come to fruition in 15 years. Certainly easily accessible healthcare would probably hasten that because so much of it's important for people to have, you know, health insurance. But I think if you think about a leader and how they engage with people that are different kinds of employees than we have today, and employees that are more used to doing gig work, and are, I think Caleb mentioned earlier about hiring people for certain skills and less, maybe less feeling responsible to train for those unless they're scarce, and maybe some companies it's worth it for them then to train folks. But so people they're empowered to build their brand and their skills and capabilities, and then put those out in the market, and the market uses them. And so in a way it's more transactional, but the leader that's managing that kind of workforce and service providers at the same time is going to have to uh, be able to engage differently, and the competencies are going to look a little bit different, I think, than they are today. And so I might question the why, Caitlin. I'm not sure if I'm being cynical or just trying to be practical. Um, that as the social contract continues to change, um, maybe the why gets answered at an individual level of what role this work is going to play in my life and my identity, my growth as a human being, my purpose. And I take different assignments based on that. Um, so I think it's going to continue to be different in that way. And I'm not sure what that means for our concept of new age, which is more about the heart and more about the individual. Um, yeah, I'm not
So,
sure.
so John, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're looking at the employee value proposition
Yeah.
and what why would this work be important to the worker? right? Um, I think that that is definitely important, and I have no answers to what that's going to look like in 15 years, because the social contract is changing. I think that where I was more so headed was around the just the experiential knowledge of taking things from a concept to why this would work in given this situation, not necessarily bringing it back to what it would mean for the individual, but what it would mean for this business context, right? Because we're you know in our profession, we've seen things happen so many times in so many different ways, um, that legacy knowledge is something that somebody who is fresh out of an MBA program is not going to have. But honestly, I think that to your point, in the future, I think that there is going to be an opportunity for more contract work, at earlier stages of your tenure. So I could see it. I could see an opportunity where you know I don't know the logistics of it, but a consulting firm is not an internship level, but at a project level, saying, we need these skill sets. We need somebody to crank out this amount of work, and we can, give you some. We'll allow you to use our name on your resume to say that you worked with this consulting firm still as an MBA, and you're building your resume so that you can, put yourself in certain situations. I could see that being a model that we move toward, in the future, but that's for a whole nother time. I'll put some thought into that. But I do think that, we will have to, as leaders, be transparent around here's why I think that this would work. Not necessarily, demeaning innovation and or anything of that regard, but here's what I've seen work. Um, I think that we could tailor this new innovative idea using some of the experience that I've led in the past. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
it does to me. I see what you're saying. It's taking the old and the new and making the
Yeah,
best.
just a blend of the two.
Yeah, taking the old and the new. That is the end of our discussion for today. Is there anything that you would like to end with?
Um, really enjoyed this conversation. This is I love talking about this type of stuff. I love having authentic conversations on these types of things. Um, and as I said in the onset, you know, I'm speaking from some trends that I'm seeing. This is not all steadfast and true. Um, but yeah, I love diving into some of these things, and I love the opportunity to do it with two people that I definitely do respect the opinions of, and
Oh,
I love the work that you all are doing.
okay, thank you. John, any last thoughts for you?
Yeah, I think I read something the other day that from the time of Socrates, we've been complaining about the next generation of people. They don't they don't work hard enough, they don't get it, and I have no reason to believe that won't continue, easily 15 years into the future, if
Mhm.
not further. Um, so by definition, in that sense, new age leadership will arrive
Mhm.
fully, and
Yeah.
we will have transitioned, and then we'll continue to transition
Mhm.
Right.
to whatever that is. And so the only thing that I can say with certainty is, the skills and attributes for future leaders is going to be around the ability to deal with change
Mhm. Mhm.
and uncertainty, uh, and we see it. It always feels like it's never been like this before, but it does feel like it increases in pace. It's global. Um, we may not feel like we're competing with someone in another country who's willing to do our job for less money, but sooner or later, someone's going to figure out a way to help make that happen. That's how capitalism works. So the world will continue to change in significant ways, and leaders are going to have to accommodate that change and help others through it.
I think when you said that, I was just thinking back. It's to me, it's same story, just new day. Same story, just a new day. Meaning that in coming through in every generation, there's always going to be something new. It's going to be new ways of thinking, but it's still the same thing. It's just the way we do things differently now. And I think a lot of that has to do with the progression of technology, thinking back how we've, over the last 30 years, how technology has influenced business and will continue to influence business, but leaders are still going to have to figure out or work around a way to integrate those new technologies like they did when years ago, when they went from a typewriter to a word processor to the first big computers. They figured it out. They had to adjust. They had to, they had to adjust. So it's still going to be the same thing. So I
Yeah.
think it's just, same story, new day.
You remind me of
You can't be. Go ahead, John.
it makes me laugh just because I'm reminded of something I first heard a long time ago when I first started working in consulting, which was all the good words have been taken.